Welcome to Chaos Divided, your weekly dose of WholesomeHammer, where we explore the hobby, the game, and the lore of Warhammer 40k. We're your hosts, Nurgle Snargle and Blushing Noise Marine. If you're enjoying the podcast, don't forget to give us a follow. This week, we're joined by our very special guest. I'm very excited about this. It is Laurence of Baharroth, the cry of old paint. And there's a couple underscores in between there. And you picked a quote for us this week. Would you like to say it?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, so my quote is from a British author called Alan Garner. And it's, I learnt that I must never finish a book with nothing else to do.
Mm-hmm. And throughout this podcast, you're going to realize that Laurence lives by this quote.
I think the 5 minutes before we started here, I think I heard about 35 different projects you've got on the go. So it's
I'm not sure I mentioned any of the modelling ones that I'm making.
No, not even. If you could say like a rough number, how many projects do you have on the go? Over 100?
No, I mean, I think like close 10, around 10, probably. I think that's probably
it's
about
more
right.
than that.
I think I'm sure once we start talking about them, because the worst thing is as soon as you start talking about them, that gives you another idea. You're like, cool. And then you realise you've got the bits for it, and then might maybe start making a little bit of it, and then you get distracted by something else, and then another thing, and it keeps on rolling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you did mention that like you like to do multiple projects, and recently I've been doing that as well, and I think it's actually a great way to approach your projects because it's constantly keeping your mind thinking about what to do and inspired, and then you take a break from this and then you can come back to it with a whole new mindset.
Yeah, I can't remember who said it. Somebody said that the best thing like an artist can do is have a space where they can always go and create. And until recently I didn't, and I still kind of don't, but I think that works really well with multiple projects because you can, whatever mood you're in, you can pick one. Like there will always be something that, and when you get really stuck and overwhelmed with something and it's not working or the paint's not working, or you just hate it.
And that is like the worst place for an artist to be, is to be stuck. Like you're in a tar pit.
Yeah, and that's, I always say that's the like perfect time to go and paint some therapy orcs, because there's nothing that like is more enjoyable than making some orcs for absolutely no reason at all.
I love the term therapy orcs. I think that's,
it's like you can kit mash anything on them. They're a very slightly different scale than all the other models, so they're easier to paint.
Yeah, they're just primary colors. Don't have to think outside the box.
I don't really collect them as well, so there's absolutely no pressure. It's just like, I can make some orcs, it's fine. And I think it's that thing of I'm very millennial and like end up commodifying absolutely everything that I'm interested in or enjoy in any way, and then killing all enjoyment of it. So it's like going back to something that's
makes so
purely
much sense.
enjoyable.
That's probably the most nihilistic thing I've heard on this podcast so far. But
yeah, I do it in a very positive way. But I think that there's definitely that drive to kind of like, I'll do this thing, and then it gets really exciting, and then I'll make some content about it, and I'll enter a competition, and I'll sell some, and then suddenly it's another job, and I'm like, this like pure joy and creation and enjoyment and community side of it has kind of decreased, and then I have to make sure I just go right back to that, which is the best part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe this is a good time, since we're still roughly in the beginning of this. Would you introduce yourself to our listeners? Kaylee gets a little excited sometimes, but we'll...
Yeah.
So that's all right. So do I as well. So my name's Laurence. I make dioramas and big miniatures, some for competitions, some just for the pure joy of it. And I've been making stuff for about 6 years. And I think I probably have a sort of reputation as as someone who just uses a lot of bits to make some very, very big models that are completely impractical. And yeah, I think that's that's basically what I do.
I think big dioramas may be selling it a little short. Some of them are absolutely awe-inspiring. And yeah, I can't imagine your coronation of Guilliman fits on the table very well.
Weirdly, that is the easiest thing that I've ever made to transport and do anything with, because it's in a box and you can just shut the box. And so for like a year while I was painting it and finishing all the building, I'd get it out, do a little bit, shut the box, and then put it underneath my bed. And I can't tell you the bliss of having a model that it fits anywhere in comparison. Yeah.
Did you do it in your bed?
Oh, okay. So everything. So my, I've just moved, but up until now, all of my models have been made on a tiny child's school desk, wedged between two bookshelves at the bottom of my bed, and the part of the reason why so many of them are very tall is because the only space I had was directly upwards. So that's really kind of helped kind of drive the direction of things I was making. But yeah, very small amount of hobby space, so everything has to be kind of built and then moved then moved back again, and it's been exhausting, and we're very happy we've got a bit more space now.
If we didn't need to be impressed already, you build these massive things on tiny spaces.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so fortunately, recently, well, at the beginning of the year, some people approached me and said that they were setting up an art exhibition for miniatures, and would I like to be part of it? And they wanted to show off kind of the larger pieces, which meant that I could get them out of my house. I could get them out of my bedroom. My missus was very happy because it really got to the point where we're sort of moving around the models to get dressed in the morning, and it was too much.
Have you bumped your pieces?
Oh yeah, all the time, like every night for a year. So especially the tower, it's got some very sort of sharp corners, and so I just kind of knock pieces off of it constantly. So.
I'm going to sidebar for a quick second. Yep. I don't normally tell people to kind of stop the podcast, but I suggest people listening right now to go to your Instagram and see what we are talking about, because this next hour is just awe-inspiring. You have to know what you are doing.
Thank you very much.
To get ready today, I was kind of doing the deep dive through like your YouTube and seeing just some of your creation, and like I was saying to Kaylee, like in a lot of the questions as I was planning this out, like I use the term piece because it's truly art, like, and not to say that like all hobbying and miniature painting isn't also art, but I think you've transcended what most people think of as like painting miniatures to like the nth degree, and I think it's like absolutely like mind-boggling what you have done with some of these ideas, and how far you've pushed like little plastic pieces.
I would say that you emphasize seeing the forest from the trees. Like you have this giant piece, but you look closer, and each little centimeter seems like it has like a story to tell. Like you don't miss details whatsoever.
I think that's one of the things that I like the most about building that scale, is that you can just keep going. I mean, all of them are very much abandoned rather than finished, and there's a part of me that goes, I could just do this a little bit more, and I could add these extra characters to it, and I think that helps with my process and like what makes me want to keep building them, because with all of them you get to a kind of tipping point usually kind of just before base coating them where you spent a long time building them, you've got a great story, and it's all kind of together in your mind, and you've overcome all these challenges in the actual construction of it, which is really interesting and exciting and fun to do. And then you've just got to kind of grind to get the last bits done, and at that point it's really hard to finish it. It's really very difficult to then be like, well, I'm actually going to paint all the rocks.
Here we go.
It's like, here I go. I was like, oh great, I made 16 angels just for this backdrop part. Brilliant. And each one of them has got multiple heads. Okay, fantastic. And I've got sort of a month left to paint it. But thank you very much, both of you. Like I love building things, and it's super cool to be recognized for building things.
So where does you talk about the story, like where does the inspiration come? Are you where are you kind of looking to say you know what, I can do that, or I'm gonna make this huge diorama out of this picture in a book? Where does the inspiration come from? Where's your muse?
I think so I kind of consume art and literature and horror films to just continuously, and always have. I love stories, and I love kind of all kind of painted mediums, and I collect an awful lot of images of different things that just kind of spark my imagination. I think it's difficult. I think there's a kind of a mixture of nostalgia that really helps a lot, and going back through kind of old Warhammer art and seeing things that I can now make, because the models are so much better, and they're much more dynamic, and cutting up plastic is a lot easier than cutting up metal. And so these things that I think Jane Zara is the perfect example. I remember seeing the Mark Gibbons art when I was sort of 9 years old, and being like, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And then I bought the model, and I was like, this is absolutely awful. It's just this none of the movement or grace or strength. The hair is just a solid piece of badly textured metal. I don't know if you've ever made her. I had still had a huge affection for it, but it's very different from how the art looked. And then with the new model, still not quite right, but you can cut all to pieces and reposition all the limbs, and it suddenly becomes, you can capture that feeling a lot more than you could than you used to be able to.
Actually, what would you say is the maybe your favorite or sort of the best sculpted miniature out there right now?
Ooh.
I guess maybe not necessarily from a quality, but encapsulates the character, encapsulates the concept.
I really I'm not super big into Space Marines, but I really liked Mephiston, because it just was exactly the same as the artwork, and I kind of love that, because it just shows how much kind of sculpting has come along. I think it's kind of difficult, because I really don't look at the models as single pieces.
You look at, how can
I'm very surprised by that.
Yeah, I know. So it's always difficult to join in when everyone gets really excited or upset about new model releases, and they're like, oh, they look shit and blah blah blah, and I'm like, well, this is just another load of new bits for me, so it's always exciting. So I'm like, oh, that arm's really cool. I would say though that the Necromunda sculpts recently have been absolutely amazing. Annoyingly, a lot of them in resin, so harder to use, but just as kind of the personality that goes into them is incredible. And I think the Vansar robot suit spider things that have just been released are going to be my next kind of go-to kit for kit bashing. I'm really excited about that.
Are you excited for New Fulgrim?
It's beautiful.
Ooh, that was a long
I know, I heard that.
It's a bit of a weird one, because I'm pretty sure there's a 40k one coming fairly soon. So
How soon?
Yeah, how soon is the question, but like all the rumors are Emperor's Children at some point. So it's, and you know, they made such a big deal about like this is only Horus Heresy. They're like, well, why would you make such a big deal about that unless the next one was coming out? And there was loads of like drip feed stuff within the Psychic Awakening of being like, oh, there's a 4-armed snake man somewhere and he's killed some people. Who could it possibly be? And like, I love all that sort of kind of like drip feed lore. But he's coming at some point. But yeah, one of those models I look at and I think, oh, that's beautiful. I'll never use it. And
where do you get your bits?
Gamers.
They just give it to you?
A little bit, yeah.
Awesome.
So I know sort of 2 or 3 people who are really like hardcore, like UK like tournament players, and they have loads of armies and they don't kit bash anything, and they just have bags and bags and bags and bags of bits, all the spare bits they've ever had. And so there's one of them I swap for like commission pieces. So he'll be like, I need an Autarch on a Wind Rider, and I'll be like, oh, okay, cool, that'll take me like a day to build. And he brings over kind of in plastic carrier bags these like enormous collection of bits.
Just a pile, like really... not even like organized or anything.
Oh no, super organized, but in like baggies. So it'd be like a huge baggie of like dark Dark Elder pieces, and then another baggie of Necron bits.
Do you guys meet
like,
at the corner,
street corner, and he's handing these things over?
You got the goods.
But yeah, that's been so helpful. And then if I like specific pieces, I swap a lot. So it's kind of the last year, the postal, like I don't know if you know what's happening in the UK at the moment, but currently our government is deliberately trashing every single thing that we own or use.
We're from Canada, so we're very
okay. That's cool. Yeah. But like basically, I used to be able to ship stuff really easily across the UK for not very much, but now none of it arrives, and I definitely can't ship stuff to Europe because it might just never get there. So it's got a little bit harder. Even during like lockdown and stuff, it was amazing. Like you could send stuff and it would get there like next day virtually, and it was really cool, kind of swapping little bags of bits everywhere. So that's kind of reduced down. But now I'm trying to make a real conscious effort to grind through a lot of the stuff I've already got.
So we talk about, I feel like kit bashing is maybe not. I feel like you're stretching the limits of what that word means. When people think of kit bashing, I think it doesn't evoke the grandioseness of what you're doing. But how do you plan out a piece? Like, do you like?
So it depends a bit. If it's like an artwork, I'll spend a really long time looking at it and trying to work out like the proportions and like compare those to kind of bits that I've already got and bits in my head. So to try and work out like what I could do to substitute things that would make it look better. If it's more of a diorama or a competition piece, I'll come up with a concept or idea. I'll make a ton of sketches for the shape and like roughly, like especially the shape of the structure. And then once I've done that, work out how I'm going to build the structure, and then after that, work out how I'm going to fill in all the different sections or different pieces. But yeah, I'm always looking. I look at every new release. I look at all the kind of different like third-party game companies, so to try and have this kind of constant mental library of like what's possible out there. I'm not very good at sculpting. I don't have any patience really with it, like with green stuff especially. And so I'm always looking for the piece that I can substitute rather than just doing a whole thing. I've got a couple of friends, the Void Winds and Luke Mockridge, who are particularly good at green stuff work, and it's always incredibly annoying. I'm like, I wish I could just make all this stuff. It'd be a lot cheaper and easier to get hold of.
What about 3D printing?
So there's a lovely Scottish friend of mine who has got several 3D printers, and I send him a list and the money for the resin every now and again, and he'll just send me all the pieces. I kind of hate working with especially 3D printer resin. Like, even with all the cleaning in the world, it's still like pretty toxic and like horrible for your skin and stuff. And I think kind of more and more I'm working with it, and I'm looking at maybe working with, I shouldn't say it, but because it hasn't gone ahead, but a printing company basically, and they might send me a printer, in which case I'll just be printing stuff like day and night.
Actually, one thing that's kind of come up, it sounds like there's a lot more of a like competitive hobby scene in the UK, which is something we definitely don't have here. So when you talk about going to competition, like, is there like, do you kind of spend your summers like going around to these like different events that are centered on hobbying, or?
So I did a bit this year. And like I tried to go to, so I went to Warhammer Fest. I went to Salute, which is in London, which is like more of a war games, like historical war gamings thing, and a couple of sort of small ones. I find they're like, I'm not very good. You know, this is a hobby. This is a sort of art form that you do by yourself in like a dark room for hours at a time. And I love talking to people, but like in quite small groups, I find like huge events incredibly like draining and overwhelming. And so it's yeah, there's definitely positives there. You get to see a lot of people, and you get to see a lot of other people's work, which is really exciting because it's very difficult to actually go and physically see other people's models a lot of the time. But yeah, I think next year I prefer kind of like something a bit smaller.
Just Instagram and YouTube.
Instagram and YouTube, yeah. Instagram and YouTube, and I think like we're looking at kind of some artist meetups and things. It's sort of like, despite living in London, I live in the wrong bit of London.
Oh,
so anytime you find like UK wargaming people who live in London, they all live in South London, which is like an hour and a half away from me. so I know it's probably a very short distance for you, but like for here, it's like, nah, that's too far.
That works here too. Like some people, they say that they're from Toronto, but they're actually like an hour and a half away from Toronto.
Yeah, and just like, yeah, I mean, at Warhammer Fest, I met loads of people, and they're like, "Oh, you're from London? I'm from London as well." So, oh, okay, great. Where are you from? Oh, yeah, from like Bromley. No, Bromley. Well, anyway, I'm from way down south, and I'm like, okay, cool. We're never ever going to meet up.
Might as well be in another country.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, and you've kind of alluded to the art installation you have currently. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so basically this is in the wonderful named place of Scunthorpe, which
I love it.
So so there's an art centre called the 2021 Art Centre, and they got an absolutely huge amount of arts funding from the government, which is fairly rare. But basically, they have been looking at doing exhibitions for accessible forms of art, and they've got a lovely gallery in this kind of converted church, and they partner with this company who was going to do a documentary on miniature makers and put some miniature artists in it basically, and you know they got some wonderful people like Louise Sugden's part of it, and they asked me if they could basically have as many of the sort of the large models I'd made because they're easy to display.
And you're like, oh, by the way, you can have all of them.
I was like, oh, this is really interesting. And they're like, oh, could we maybe have one of these? And I was like, you could have all of them if you want. They're like, oh, really? And I was like, yeah, please take them. So this guy turned up with a truck, and me and him carried them all downstairs and put them back on some mattresses. And I was like, wait, is this real? Somebody's stolen all my models. I was like, well, okay, if they've stolen them, that's going to be an interesting story in itself, and it's, you know. But yeah, so that got set up. People sent in miniatures from all around the world. So there's quite a few sort of American miniature artists that are quite good friends of That Beyond the Light and Totally Not Panicking, and a couple of others, and all kind of like this really nice collection of miniature work, and we went up to see it kind of for its opening day, and it's just amazing to see your stuff alongside other people's. And some of it you realize that you've been looking at this person's work for like 3 or 4 years, speaking to them quite regularly, but you've never actually seen it you've never seen it in person. And there is something really wonderful about seeing it in a kind of display cabinet. And I was definitely a bit overwhelmed with it, but it was lovely that we went up, there was maybe sort of 10 artists at the kind of artist open day, and so I got to spend actual time with them and talk about different ideas and things we make for each other, and there was loads of kids there, and they got really excited about it. And we bought some sprues and started to make some stuff with them. And that, seeing kids get involved and being like, that's the joy. That is the real joy of this. So yeah, I'm going back up on the 13th of October for there's like a semi-open day, so I'm going to be teaching sort of building class, and then the next day there is going to be a screening of the documentary they made, and hopefully after that it will be put on some sort of streaming service or something so that everyone can watch it, because they interviewed Gav Thorpe and like a bunch of Warhammer sculptors and like some really interesting people alongside some amazing artists, and me. so it'd be really cool. And so yeah, I think that's been really like the highlight of my year, because it suddenly it's like, oh, you're an artist in an actual exhibition. It's very cool.
Do they have your name and your plaque and everything?
They have a video of me next to my work.
Oh.
So part of that from the documentary. And while I was there was like a very confused 4-year-old who kept looking at the picture, like the film of me, and then looking back at me, and I was wearing the same shirt, and it just like kept going back and forth, and like slightly terrified, and I was like, okay, this is great.
That's me.
How did it feel to, having miniature work is not something you typically see in an art gallery, but then to also see your work aside all these others almost being elevated in this very public art space? How does that feel?
I mean, it's amazing. Like, I think, I really like championing other people's work, and like sharing off kind of, I spend probably most of my time I spend in the hobby is being on Instagram looking at other people's work, like more than anything else, really. I don't know how universal that is, but I think probably quite universal. And you suddenly realize people make such amazing stuff, and then to see it in person, and also I don't know, I mean, it is different when you know what's gone into it, and like how difficult is the technique that they've done, and like the hours they put into that thing, and it just feels so kind of special to be around that. And I know a lot of people get kind of like imposter syndrome with I mean, I think our biggest like community space is social media, which is by nature very competitive, and like has there's a lot of like very negative parts of it in like how engagement works and all that sort of stuff, and so it was very nice to see it all in a place that's completely separate from that, and that you can just chat to different people and be like, oh, this is cool, and oh, that's really nice, how did you do that?
Have you felt the negative side?
I would say for me the big negative side is the desire to, like, if a post goes really well and you get like a gajillion likes, it's super cool and like very enjoyable, and then the crash directly after that is not very nice. And then when it doesn't do very well, and I think I made probably like a slight tactical error in that, like I really wanted to be a enthusiastic and positive voice in the community, because there was so much that wasn't that. And that's the bit that I really love. But also, if I'm personally not feeling that, if I feel shit and like I'm having a bad time, it's then very difficult for me to do anything on social media, because it's not what I positioned myself as. So so I think there is a kind of, I don't know, I have to remind myself that my hobby is not making stuff for social media. It's making stuff, and then the social media part of it just happens to be there. It's like an addition rather than the driving factor.
Yeah, you can't let that algorithm shape who you are and what your work pieces have to be.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that can, I don't know, I think also, say, like, it's very easy to suddenly rely on it for your social network almost entirely. And so if you're posting stuff regularly, people are talking to you and you're chatting about this, and everyone's got I think often it helps a lot with neurodivergent people and people who are not necessarily like very confident, because you have a single thing you can immediately talk to anyone about at any time of day. So you're like, oh, there's this law, or you've made this thing, or whatever. But then as soon as you aren't posting, it starts to dry up, and suddenly your communication is going and going and going, and you might be like, the thing that would really be great right now is having lots of chats about random things, but because of the way that you've kind of built this thing, it doesn't work. And then that downswing is not much fun.
No, but I think it's also recognizing that downswing and seeing if for what it is what helps. Like I find that with mine, like I'll see the peaks and then I'll see the dips, and then I'll just kind of ride it like a wave. Like I see it, they call it like the Tarzan method. As long as you get to the end point, you can go up, you can go down, but as long as you're going forward, that's what matters.
I think that definitely, I think that was. I think I can see that, because I think as well, like I would say that I have about 600 to 1,000 people who are my like genuine kind of followers / friends.
Yeah, your core.
I know those are the people, the core that I've seen all their stuff, they've seen all my stuff, we comment on everything, we chat all the time, they like everything that I post, we have lots of engagement, and that group is the hardest thing to add to. And the more followers you get, it gets harder and harder to add to that group, because actually the volume of kind of people just like casually talking to you, or just you have one interaction once and you never have an interaction again, becomes much larger.
Yes.
And so it's quite difficult to kind of get back to the great exciting thing, which is why I find competition's good, because you've got a single thing that you're all going for, and a deadline.
So going
deadlines
through
are important.
So obviously Laura and I did our homework. We went through your feed, and in the beginning you were very much just like elder models, and then it seemed like, was it Smash Bash that it really took off with this, I guess, kit bashing? Like how would you call it kit bashing, or would you
I think, I mean, I kit bashed my Eldar a lot, but there is a limit, especially I mean, like fairly recently you've had a lot of new releases, which is great, and there's a few great elf releases that you can kit bash the pieces with as well, but they are, I think, one of the harder factions, because they've got such a clear aesthetic, and there are a limited number of bits, and so they're very good way of starting off to learn kit bashing, because it's really difficult.
There you go.
Very fiddly, and really hard. And I think the first kind of point of it was switching a little bit over to Harlequins and seeing Sons of Ananta, who's Tom Taylor Biggs' work, who's just got some like beautiful, like very kind of like amazing storytelling in very simple like Elder and Harlequin kit bashes and beautiful paint jobs. And suddenly I was like, oh right, I can kind of make anything I want.
Did you ever?
Yeah, thank you. And I think, I got back into the hobby to game, and so I was maybe tempered a little bit at the start with like trying to have it WYSIWYG and whatnot, and then I very rapidly realized that I was never going to play in tournaments, and I was never going to play if somebody was upset by my models not being right. There's no way I would enjoy talking to them for 3 hours. So like, I was just like, well, I could just kind of make anything I want. And when I saw the first Smash Bash competition, the kind of there were a few entries that had already, I think I found it about halfway through, and there were a few entries already up, and one of the what's it called, the categories basically said the thing they were looking for was creativity, in the ideas, and I was like, oh, okay, so it doesn't, I'm not the greatest painter in the world. I've got my old specs on. I have to paint with a painting lens. I'm never going to be like Golden Demon standard, and that's totally fine. Like, it's just I like making things in a different way. But then to see a competition where it's like, have you got any ideas? Yes, I've got some ideas.
Oh, by the way, I've been waiting for this question.
It's like, what would you like to do? Yeah.
Yes.
What could you do next? And I think because I've got enough Eldar to game with forever, I have a lot of Eldar. I've got enough. I could, just add little pieces to that every now and again if I wanted a new unit or whatever. Still have the gaming side of it, and then really kind of just start to buy things for bits and for the joy of it, and look at different kits and making different things. And it's a really nice feeling when you're like, I collect this, but also I can make anything I want from any faction at any time. That is nice. Although there is one thing that is just bubbling away in my mind, and I don't know why I've never got around to doing it, which is doing Trazyn the Infinite sitting on a throne throwing out Tesseract cubes with different units from different time periods. So like some Heresy Marines, and then maybe some Slan or something fantasy ridiculous, and all these kind of like different things. And I've got quite a lot of the bits for it, but it's just in my box of
that would be incredible.
That actually kind of reminds me, because like when I was going through your stuff and I was with my fiance, I got really like inspired by these huge pieces, and I was like, what could I do? And I was like thinking of this hurricane of all of of all these factions, demons versus Grey Knights, and Imperial Fist versus Iron Warriors, just in this swirl, and just like seeing your stuff open up that creativity.
Oh, cool. I mean,
you can have that idea if you want.
Do you remember I never played it, but I did watch the trailers. Was it Dawn of War 2 trailer, where you've got the all the different factions like dead and dying in a giant pile at the end?
It could be. We'll hear
okay.
from a listener saying yay
we'll
or nay.
Look at that another time. But yeah, I think that sounds like a really cool idea. I really like it. I think it could work really well. Also, I love it when somebody has an awesome idea that's either something that I'd like to make or adjacent to it, because then I don't have to do it. There's no part of me that feels like any kind of there's too many things that I want to make. If somebody makes it first, it's such a joy, because you're like, oh great, you scratched that itch, now I don't have to.
I get to see it, thank you.
yeah 100%, because a lot of the time the prompt is I see something or I read something and I think I could make that, and then how would I go about doing that? And then it's in me, and it just is digging away constantly and thinking, oh, actually that I could add that thing, and how do I solve this problem? And at that point I'm like, oh, maybe I should just buy a couple of these bits in case I do make this. And then suddenly you've got boxes and boxes and boxes
behind
and boxes
you
and stuff. Yeah.
Is there a project that you're most proud of?
The Tower of Angels, the floating tower. I think it's so similar to what I thought it would be when I first kind of imagined what I was going to make. And visually, it's quite. This is one of the reasons it's great to go to the exhibition if you're in Scunthorpe.
There you go.
Because it's so tall, it's really difficult to get a sense of it when on social media, because it's enormous. But when you're in person with it, it just has it doesn't look like it should work, which I really like about it. I think I realized quite early on that because plastic is so light, you can make things that are really don't look like they should exist, and they start to look like they're made of metal, or they're made of all this machinery, but in reality they're you could do it at any angle or have it sticking out, and so making things that look like they defy gravity is like a real joy.
To seeing the awe in the audience.
Yeah, and I had this lovely moment where I was making it on this child's desk that I make things on that I'd forgotten about is slightly lower than a normal desk by maybe like 6 inches.
Oh, so it's a lot taller than you expected.
Yeah, so it's taller than I thought it was. So I picked it up and stabbed it into the ceiling, straight into the ceiling. Fortunately, nothing broke because I built it very solidly. And then to get it in, because I was painting it with oil paints, I had to move it out of my bedroom every night so that the fumes didn't like kill me and my girlfriend. So I had to like
That's
lean,
love.
like go down to my knees underneath all the doorways to get it through. So yes, it's 5 foot tall,
Wow.
which is great.
That's hard to understand. That doesn't fit in my head.
What does she think of all of this?
So she could not care less about
Warhammer?
it as a whole, right? As about Warhammer or about like the world or like anything. But her attitude very much is like it's something that I enjoy and that brings me huge amounts of joy and brings other people lots of joy. And so why wouldn't I do it? Basically,
That's
so she's
amazing.
enormously supportive,
That's
which
great.
is very very helpful. Right up until the point where I made the last smash bash out of a globe, and the globe I got stank of old cigarettes and took up all the room in our bedroom, and she was not very happy about it, which completely fair. And I wasn't very
Laurence, I love you,
big.
but
Yeah, exactly it was very very much that. So the it was basically it was going in the scrap if the exhibition didn't take it, so I'm very happy the exhibition took it.
Can they keep it?
Yeah, that was a bit debated thing, which is partially why I've got to build the workshop outside so that I've got somewhere to put it when it comes back.
Do you have like a display area for all this when it comes back?
Nope.
Oh.
So my system used to be I make something, either it stays where it is because it's too big, or it goes in a box and then it goes underneath the bed. And that used to be the sort of cycle of making things and putting it in a shoebox. And it was really nice moving, because as I was packing, I was like, oh, what's in this shoebox? And I was like, oh, my Men of Iron project that I'd totally forgotten that I made and never finished. But it's really cool. And suddenly I found all these other models. But yeah, I haven't got everything out in one place for about 3 years. So I think when the exhibition pieces come back, I will get everything out and do a photo of just like the whole lot in one go and see how it is. And then it's going to go into the workshop.
We're going to need a Warhammer World Part 2 where everyone can put all their pieces in.
I think that's really nice. Clearly one of the things that I first thought, like I saw your like hobby setup and the gaming room, and I just thought, oh, it's so like aesthetically beautiful, which you never see. Like you never see with anyone's hobby setup. It's like, okay, maybe you get like somebody who's got like an RGB like color setup or whatever, which is not really, I'm too old for that. But wood paneling and plants, wonderful.
It took a lot of work. Like it did not start like that whatsoever. We were very much in like everything's in like mixed boxes and didn't know where things were, and it's like then lockdowns happened, so we had lots of time. So everything went into tackle boxes and I had lots of time to organize, and it felt better, and we've just been maintaining that.
I think that's the thing. Like once you kind of got it set up, then you can kind of maintain it a little bit. I would like to get to the point where I can get some sort of studio somewhere that's external, but I don't know if I have this like that. Part of the difficulty of making enormous things is that you then want to top it.
Yeah.
And something that I'd love to make and absolutely do not have space for is I would love to make a hanging city inside a 4-poster bed. So all of it's like kind of like a spire city, but all of it's hanging down underneath with walkways and gantries and things. And I think it would be really fun. Like you could make it so you could play on it as well. It'd be really fun. But I need a 4-poster bed, space for the 4-poster bed, and then all the stuff to put inside it. So yeah, that's in the future.
Well, we do have some listeners in the UK, so if you could help Laurence here.
If you have a studio in London that is big enough for a 4-poster bed, please let me know.
Yeah, I'm like picturing like what is it, Kimura, the Dark Eldar.
Oh yeah.
City. That
Actually,
would
that's
be
a really
Wow.
that
all
would
those
be
like weird angles and kind of
the spikes and the and you could put like their Colosseum pit in the center of it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Cogs are going.
This is,
Well,
if I had any talent whatsoever, that would be that like.
Well, because also because you've got something that's because it's working on something like that scale, you just split it in half. So one side of it would be Kimura, and then you split it in half, and it's like through the, the other side of the Immaterium, and then you have Hive City, and it's like, oh, okay, this is great because you've got the scale to work for. I think though something like that, you get a lot of people involved with it, and you do it as a kind of collaborative project, I think.
Has all your pieces been singly you, or have they been collaborated with?
I don't know if you did you see the Magos, the like tall Magos with the big giant ball of electronics on the back of it?
No.
And the big floating so I did this project a couple of years ago called like Charity Kit Bash, and one person built and another person painted.
Oh, cool.
Which for me had like absolute heaven, because I was like, I could just go completely wild, not have to even consider putting the tiniest bit of paint on it.
And then you just pass it and the painter's like, whoa, where do I start?
Yeah, so I got this really nice guy. He's a great painter, and I just completely forgot his name. That's awful. It's been a long day. I'll remember his name at some point. And basically, he was like, "Oh, have you seen this artwork of this? It's called The Lady and the Knight by Lucy. I can't remember his name exactly, but he's basically a Warhammer artist, and it's in the Knights Codex." And there's a knight in the background, and in front of it is just the most enormous, like tall, elegant Magos you've ever seen. All these like cherubs everywhere, very, very spindly. And I think he was a bit like, well, yeah good luck with that. That's hard. It's not tall enough. What if she was possessed with an AI? Because I was making AI at the time. I was like, I'll stick that on top of it. And yeah, I'll send you the link afterwards, because it's a really fun model, and it was so nice working with somebody who just like take that and put his own perspective on it and paint it in a way that I would never paint it. I think he did like this brocade on all of the robes that took almost 6 months. It looks beautiful. Not going to do that myself. But apart from that, I don't know if you know Dad and Lad. He's like a very they do a lot of like community based stuff. He's got like 4 kids, and they all kind of like pitch in ideas. So suddenly it's like dinosaurs and space marines. What if they were combined? Really fun. And he did this thing called Hobby Ride Out, and basically sent a space marine biker to different people across the world, and each person would add a bit and paint a little bit and add a bit, and I did sort of Hulk Hogan-esque sidecar guy for it. And yeah, that was really fun. Enjoyed that. I think there's some people have got that planned soon to do something where they send around a model and everyone adds to it. But I mean, shipping models is its own like nightmare.
Yeah. Could you do it at like a convention? Like if you guys did like a...
Yeah, I think that'd be really fun. I think one of the difficult things with doing it on site is always just the time, because I don't know about you, but like sometimes I can build stuff really quickly, and other times I cannot at all.
Like the moons have to be aligned, and like you have to have your proper
had to have
beverages.
enough sleep and enough caffeine, and be exactly
rituals
in the flow state,
and like the smoke. Yeah.
You have to anoint the machine spirits correctly.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess you know what, we're kind of talking about ideas and that. What do you see in your own future? What does the next few years look like for?
So I want to build. So I'm going to build this workshop outside so that I've got somewhere to build things. And I think being able to paint and build at the same time is really going to take a lot of the pressure off. Yeah, like before I was sort of building stuff and then clearing everything down, getting my paints out, and then painting for a bit. And then if I wanted to paint, vice versa, it's kind of stopping. I'm doing a project with. Let's make sure I get the names right exactly. With this guy called Colt, which is his username is Into the Grey North, and he has got his own universe. It's called Salvatore 28, and it's part of the sort of 28 miniatures community. And we're basically going to make this like church tank, but really big, like really big. So huge tracks, and then like a cathedral basically on wheels, and with an orchestra and stuff. And I think that's going to be really fun.
Why do they need cathedrals on tanks and ships? I don't get it.
Well, to move it, it's just
is it just because you can build spaceships doesn't mean you don't put everything on tracks.
Exactly. There's been a few times where like the Sisters of Battle, they're like drop cathedrals. I mentioned in the lore recently, where they're like what they call? They're called something like fortress cathedrals, and they drop down, land, and then attract. So they also like move forward and carrying guns and things. That'd be a really nice model to make as well.
There you go.
So yeah, I think I've got a load of projects that are in mind, and
more than 5.
More than 5. I think I tried quite a few different things with like YouTube, and I don't really like making videos. It takes it's quite highly skilled, and it's not something that like my natural wheelhouse. I think I want to get into this pipeline a little bit of having a great idea, building something huge, filming, making a little video about making it, posting that, and then doing loads of sort of different community things, because I love working with different people, and I like chatting on this sort of stuff, and like and highlighting kind of new people who are new miniature artists as well. I think we really enjoy that. So I think I'm trying to get into kind of more of a structure, because it's just been chaos the last couple of years. But it's difficult, because sometimes things, Guilliman took from start to finish 2 years.
Oh, wow.
So it's hard to kind of plan around that. But then it was a project that I was just doing for the fun of it, and so I'd keep coming back to it and be like, and then I'd get stuck and put it under my bed again for a bit, and then get it back out again and be like, oh, this is fun. So
do you feel better when you have a deadline?
I finish things when I've got a deadline. I think that's the
motivator.
Yeah, so I think pre-lockdown, we have a small gaming group called the Goons, named after what we were called at school. So we've reclaimed that, because it wasn't bestowed nicely. But basically, so some of my friends from school got back together again, and we wanted to meet up and play. And my friend challenged me to a 2,000 point game, and I was like, oh yeah, we'll do fully painted armies. He'd already done his. I didn't really realise how much work it was doing a fully painted army again. It was very good for learning brush techniques and practice. I'm not sure I want to do it again from scratch. But we were quite strict about basically only putting stuff down on the table if it was fully painted. And so we'd book a game in a couple of months' time. Would want to try out new units. The deadline would be there, so you definitely get it done by that day. And then when lockdown happened, suddenly that was gone, and everyone was like, oh yeah, I've painted more Warhammer than I've ever painted. And I was like, I've done nothing. Because there's no deadline. I could just take forever. I think I painted some Shining Spears, and sort of did 3 months painting their cloaks, and was like, what? I don't know what I'm doing. And then finding like online competitions where there's a fixed deadline was the kind of the thing that really ignited my imagination. And it ends, and you have to get it in by then, so you have to do it.
Yeah,
it's good.
And you go at the end, you're like, it is what it is, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I leave a day for taking photos, and I always
Mhm.
get to that day, and then I hate myself for leaving a day to take photos. Like, the light is really bad. There's loads of stuff that needs doing. Might be it's still wet, and like moving it around, you get covered in paint. And yeah, it's always really stressful. And then it's done, and then you're exhausted.
Are you critical of your art?
So I was close to choosing this as a quotation, but then I couldn't find who'd actually said it. I don't think I made it up. So I think some artist made it up. I'm not sure which artist did, and they basically said it is your job to create and not to critique.
Yeah, but
And I know, and because for me, like, I can see every mistake.
Yeah.
Like, I can see every single thing I should have done differently. Like, I know what's wrong with it. I know all the bad things about it. But the problem is, if I think about that at all, I just don't do it. Like, and that kind of perfectionism seeps in, and I end up not creating. Whereas if I'm in that flow state where I'm just making things, I'm enjoying it and having a nice time, and it's enjoyable, and then it gets to the end and I think, oh, it doesn't quite look right, and you keep adjusting, and it's great, and then you think, oh, I absolutely hate it, it looks terrible,
I can't go
it's
back.
appalling. Post. Let's see what happens. Does anyone like it? I fucking hate it now. I don't want to see it ever again. Like, and then you find out whether or not other people like it or not.
Usually they love it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I know that what I see is going to be more critical than any other person.
Because you're already thinking of the potential of what you have in your mind. So you're like, I have a road to get to it.
Exactly. You know what you were aiming at, and what you think you could kind of do, and it's not to say that like I don't want to try and make things better or like improve in techniques and stuff like that, but there's certain things that like I know I'm not going to spend X amount of time learning a particular technique to do something. So there are like limits to my own work. I saw quite a few people being like, right, well, I'm going to start painting my single miniature now for next year's Golden Demon and spend a year glazing it. And I was like, well, I'd rather die. Spend a year glazing one model, and it looks beautiful. It looks absolutely beautiful. It's like stunning, but my eyes aren't that good. So, I'm never going to be able to do that. So it's not worth thinking about.
Yeah.
I think also I try and I'm very much here for it being a positive thing in my life. Like, I'm here for it being people enjoying the stuff that I make and me enjoying other people's work and things like that. And so I tend to shy away from kind of like any critical thinking about it at all. Like like especially I do not like what's it called when people give you criticism that's not
constructive criticism,
or
when it's not
unwarranted
asked?
criticism, unsolicited
criticism will just get you blocked from all of my platforms immediately. Because
warning,
I haven't got time for that. I don't care.
do it.
Yeah, just there you go. There's a warning. If someone go, oh, you should have painted that thing like that. Well, I know. Block. I know, like, I can see it. I do not need some random person pointing that out to me on the internet. I have already seen it a million times and stressed out about it way worse than you could possibly imagine. I don't need somebody pointing out everything that I've done wrong. And like, I'm not here for that. I'm here for people being like, oh, that's cool. Because I think, and I spend a lot of my time going through people's work and going, oh, that's really cool. Yeah. And it's because we do something that's cool.
You know what? I think that's right. If you spend hundreds, if not thousands, of hours on something, like, that's not the time to be like, hey, here's a minor imperfection you may or may not have noticed. Like, why don't you stew on that one there? Like, just enjoy it for what it is. You didn't have to do the thing. Enjoy it that somebody else did.
Yeah, I think as well. Like, it is so often ungenuine as well, and like I can't be bothered to work out whether or not it's genuine or not. Like, I'm like, if it feels like an attack, it probably is an attack. So you're gone. And I think it's partially because like I find I find like trolls quite easily triggering. Like it gets into your head, and I realize that I spent like several hours or a day thinking about some idiot said to me that I don't know on the internet. Like, and I'm like, well, if I press this magical block button, they cease to exist.
Yeah.
And I never have to think
Delete.
about them ever again. Delete. And it's a really liberating thing.
Yeah.
And I sometimes think like, okay, maybe there is an element that maybe I misread like a social interaction, and like that would be
Nurgle.
But then I'm not getting paid for this. I'm just doing this for fun, so
let's have fun.
let's have fun with it. Like it's an enjoyable thing. I think like so I don't know if you do you sort of read 28 magazine?
Nope.
So there's a great online magazine called 28 magazine, and it's about people who make models that aren't necessarily the standard. So lots of small makers and unusual things, and it's really interesting. And like the photography is wonderful, and the miniatures are amazing. And they did a competition a few years ago called Female Space Marines.
Oh.
So I made a female Space Marine for it, and just the abuse like that just like fed in, and I was like, I am a straight white blonde man, like I like this. I cannot imagine how much worse it must be for anyone else that isn't me. And it was I was just like, it was horrific. And but I won the competition, so I was very happy with it.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I find
was
some of the stuff that they put up there is just hilarious, like that they take their time to write a comment, and they obviously want like the attention, and they're so starved for it. There was the one troll I've had at the beginning of this year, and he said my paintings were mediocre at best. I stared at that comment, obviously no profile, no pic, and I was like, that's hilarious. Like, well, what do you think I am, a golden demon? Like, it was just my models. And
so this is quite a big segue, but so I used to do a lot of dancing, and so we did ballroom dancing and like Lindy Hop and all that sort of stuff. And we always used to say that the absolute worst people were intermediate, because someone would get a little bit good, and then they would gatekeep, and they would police, and they would hassle people, and we were there to dance with other people. Like, that was the point. It's like that's the point in this really, really niche thing that nobody cares about. Like, it's and yet people would specifically do it to kind of like crush beginners and like new people and stuff like this, and so it was very familiar joining the 40k.
I was about to say, I've never seen that happen with Warhammer
within this niche.
And I think my a friend of mine, anytime he gets that, he has a particular goal in mind, and he's like, I'm going to talk to this person until they block me. And I'm like, well, okay, this is some psychological warfare that I can't, that like, it's too much for me. But he does it, and like, and they always end up blocking.
I was going to
say,
he's successful.
Yeah, he's really successful doing it. It's like, it's amazing. But it's just there's got to be something. You've got to be very, very, very miserable for like that to be your outlet, basically, or like 13, and which I suppose you're going to be very miserable as well.
I don't remember being particularly happy at 13 either, but you know, it's an unfortunate thing, because I feel like the more people we talk to, especially the like hobbyists that are putting their work out there, putting their art out there, and the negativity and the criticism seems to be like a constant. Like, it's not just like there's one person dealing with this and they're the outlier. Like, it seems to almost be the norm that as you sort of become a better known artist, you just also have to deal with all of this, and it's really unfortunate.
Yeah, I'd say I think there's probably partially it's because you're on things that there are a lot of anonymous people. I was very nervous about going over to YouTube because of YouTube, and then weirdly, out of every platform, I've had the least stuff on YouTube, possibly because not enough people have watched my stuff yet. But like very much.
Did you have a video that's like 100,000 views?
Yeah,
that's
the only one I got lots of stick for. So like quite early on in the beginning, I say like, oh, you know, I've cobbled this together through all of the like pictures and stuff I took of it because I wasn't filming it while I was making it, and like 100 people commented, "There's too much of you talking, and there's not enough footage of the model." I was like, yes, because I didn't take any footage of making the model, as I've said, because I didn't set it up this way.
Is that how you reply? Just, yes.
No. It's Blockham's well.
Yeah.
I mean, YouTube's one is amazing. Like that, it's so clever. For anyone who doesn't know, you hide them from the channel, and then they still see the comment. And if they comment more on it, it shows up for them, but no one else in the world can see them.
So they're just talking to themselves,
screaming into the void. Amazing. Like just that as a feeling that, you know, you're not only blocking them, but you're also like gaslighting them. You're also like tricking them into thinking that, oh, actually everyone can see my like ridiculous comment.
But can you still see them
that's so clever. I'll tap some more, blah 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 blah. Nothing. No one sees it. I never get mentioned. It never sends me an update from that person ever again. Wonderful.
Can you still see their comments?
No.
Oh wow.
There you go. They disappear. So yeah, it's hide from channel, and like I think you can. I think there is a way of like going through your comments and unhiding them if you want to, if you are a masochist. but like, yeah, I'm like, no, they're gone. They don't exist anymore, and they're just somewhere shouting at themselves. That's fantastic.
That's great motivation.
To bring us maybe back to Warhammer, you did talk about having a gaming group. How are you finding 10th? Have you had a few games? Are you? Yeah,
I've had I've had like maybe 8 or 9 games. I really enjoyed it up to, so I'm going to caveat
so
this
much
by
hesitation.
saying I play Eldar.
Oh, right.
So
oh,
you know,
so okay.
I love I've been playing I bought my first models in 1996, which were Striking Scorpions, which I still sometimes take like the exact ones in game, and you know they are my love in the terms of the lore and the models, and that really is kind of the thing that brought me into the hobby, and I like being able to build, like spend ages thinking about like building a convoluted, like monstrous list that's going to absolutely obliterate the enemy or die immedately and then all my stuff explodes. And I really love playing like that. And so I love playing Harlequins as well. And then now just being like, I've got loads of guns that are really good and that's about it. It's not very interesting. So I think we're gonna do like a mini. We've got quite a lot of new players recently. I mean, one of the really great things is we lost loads of people in 9th. Like it was very hard to get games because everyone was quite casual, and the pace of change and the number of books you needed just got to the point where and really, if you didn't build around the right secondaries, you lost. So you'd lose before you started playing if you weren't like very on top of the game, which no one was. So everyone stopped playing. And then 10th, everyone's back and they're really engaged again and they're enjoying it and playing a lot. But I'm finding it a bit like I can bring this list, I can see how it's going to play, I can obliterate things. That's about it. So we're going to do 1,000-point mini tournament for the next like month, and I'm going to take just Harlequins and see if I can manage to make them not suck.
So speaking to like an Eldar player, like people come into the table, did they have like a look of defeat on their face?
I mean, nobody likes playing me that much anyway.
Oh.
Oh no, I mean it's like it's a kind of a bit of a joke. Like it's a bit of a joke in the gaming group anyway, because like you know, Eldar are quite horrible. They always are going to be fairly horrible to play against because they are so killy, and if you play them really well, they just ignore all of the things that you can do with them, and that's always been something that I really like. It's like, oh, I've got some Harlequins and you can't shoot them and they're invisible and then they jump over you and then they ignore all these rules
in the sky.
and exactly and I think that it can be very uninteractive and very boring to play against if you're just removing your models and you're like, oh, I've got this trick, no you can't do that, oh, I've got this trick, nah, sorry mate. I've got my extra save and I come back to life and blah 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 blah. and it requires skill and it requires like a lot of learning like how to do that. And then 10th was a bit like, oh, here's my Wraith Knight and another Wraith Knight and some D-cannons, and I've got 11 Bright Lances and all of them automatically hit and automatically do 6s to wound. Like trying to tailor it for games at casual level was really been quite challenging. And so my Thousand Suns friend, the first game we had was just like an absolute bloodbath. Like all of his shit just evaporated off the table, which was great fun, but not very fun for him. And then we tried much more kind of like meme lists for me against his like maxed out Warp Flamer Nightmare list, and that was much more like a close run thing. And he did win. But yeah, I think like I love 10th, and I think it's a really great fast game for people getting back into it. I can't wait for a codex to kind of give me some more interesting options, so it's not just shooting and like waiting for my tanks to become more expensive. I mean, I opened the book and I only got the points thing, and I was like, I can take 11 grav tanks. It's just bonkers. It was just, and I know the points increases have kind of like crept up, but I think it's still, I think because I don't know how you found it, but I have found lethality has gone down a bit, especially in combat.
Yeah,
but all the shooting has stayed.
Yeah, except Eldar, I would say it definitely has gone down. Playing into Eldar, no, everything, I've been tabled on turn 2 a few too many times.
Yeah, and that's boring to play. I don't know. I don't like playing that. It's just, you want to have a game where there's a challenge and it's like it's difficult to win. It's no fun to just curb stomp somebody basically
over and over and over.
Yeah, exactly. And I think at the beginning there's excitement in like new rules interactions and how things work, and you're trying to figure that out and how it's all gonna fit together, which I really enjoy. I enjoy like theory hammer a lot and trying to work out like interesting lists, and obviously it's great that it's got simpler for everyone to play, but then losing maybe like the points for weapons options has made it a lot less granular, and it's very easy just to go, I've got Bright Lances on absolutely everything that I
and I guess we're getting a little bit longer in here, but I did want to talk, you've kind of danced around the lore, but are you a lore buff?
Yes, enormously. I think I read all the Black Library books that come out,
like
as
all
far
of
as
them.
I can, but like pretty much.
I think we found our completionist, Laura.
My friend Science Pie, who is the mod of the Elder Reddit group, and he's like very active on Twitter and he's a great guy, and we basically we'll just get every audiobook that comes out and then we'll talk about it. And so I like having a sense of where all of the universe is and all the stories are and all the tiny little lore bits and pieces, so that I can ignore that and build something else. or have an idea from that, or like have my own kind of conception of like what I think should come after that. It's just it feels a little bit separate from maybe all the different sections, but certainly if I'm not really feeling building stuff, if I've not got very many games, I love reading the books, and I love kind of keeping up with the lore, and I really like seeing how I love telling stories, and they've got a real I have this thing about soap operas, and that soap operas are like the canon that we've created, that is more important than almost all canon in kind of Western civilization, because it's stories where there's societal change at a glacial pace. And you look at something like Coronation Street, which has been running for 60 years, with thousands of hours of television and enormously complicated branching routes of characters. And I love the fact that you can have that much detail and intricacy and then nothing actually happen. Everyone just interacts but nothing changes, and then eventually like something will happen and there'll be some slight different change. But if you come back to it in a year's time, the characters will be shouting about something very slightly different than they were last shouting about, but you can instantly recognize what the storyline is and exactly what's happening. And I think it's a really interesting way of storytelling, and it can be very frustrating. And I think there's something about the new setting that you had such a cataclysmic, exciting event. And it definitely like helped draw me back into the hobby. I was like, oh, I want to know what's happened. That, you know, the Gathering Storm was kind of the period that I got back into it, and that like drip feeder suddenly being like, oh, okay, there's maybe a new Elder God, and oh, I remember when Eldrad like was talking about that in the 3rd edition codex, and all these kind of links back. So you've got this hugely exciting period, and then immediately they stop it, you know, and literally Dark Imperium goes, and then the Indomitus Crusade happened, and nothing changed, and now we're on to the next bit. There's 200 years where it's all fine, no big events, and you're like, sort of exciting. And I they've obviously retconned that now to be like part of it or something. I'm a bit lost on like where that is, but yeah, that kind of storytelling, drip feeding small bits of information that are really exciting. So you could read a whole book and actually really there's only maybe a chapter in it that's interesting, and the rest of it is just some Space Marine waffle. Yeah, I do like that.
I mean, that's most of the Horus Heresy series. I like the comparison to a soap opera, because I've always very much felt that it's a lot of like big over the top characters just sort of like posturing and like emoting at each other, but like the actual mechanics of like what happens over those like 60 books would only take a single book to tell.
I mean, I felt like I went on the same journey so many different times, where it introduced me to a chapter that I thought I didn't care about at all, and it'd be like, and here's the White Scars, and I'd be like, I don't care about White Scars. And then 2 books in, I'm like, oh my god, these are the coolest guys in the world, this is so interesting, and there's the Dark Glass, and like, oh, this is, and that's how they got to Terra, wow. Amazing. And then you go on to the next group of people, and it kind of worked for all of them, I would say, maybe barring the Dark Angels, who like were just uniformly awful somehow the entire way through it. I think they just didn't know what to do with them. They had this like, you know, there's the sense that the Dark Angels are the most deadly, insane chapter, Legion, they're going to be the worst badass motherfuckers, but they weren't there somehow at all for any of it, and nothing they did mattered, and they weren't there at the end, and so they just, I don't know, there's all this noodling around.
Well,
I really like them. I like them as an idea. Like, you know, I love Lionel Johnson, but I felt out of all the chapters, all of the Legions, they
almost had too much of an established like lore going into them writing the heresies, where like the Dark Angels were probably the only ones that actually had an arc to themselves that had actually ever been fleshed out beyond like the heretics are heretics and the loyalists are loyalists.
So they had to crowbar in the events, right?
Yeah,
it's just like, you know, they are, Caliban is destroyed, and there's the Rock, and the Lion's asleep, and yeah, everyone thinks he wasn't at Terra for some reason that's undisclosed, and blah blah blah. So you know, they had to kind of, and then all the stuff with Conrad Kurz and being like, I don't know, Conrad Kurz is maybe my least favorite of all of the. I like the Night Lords, and like ADB's Night Lords trilogy is really like fantastic read, but like, I don't know, mad space Batman who murders people. No.
Meh.
Thank you. Okay, we did a Prime Rec episode, and I called him Batman, and I feel like I was maybe made fun of for that. But that's what he is. He's homicidal Batman.
Yeah.
And
Like they
suicidal.
really needed to put just a little bit more work into his backstory, so it's not like he saw a girl shoplifting and so he ripped off her skin, and you're like, what?
But no one likes
You
that.
know? And then created this whole thing and tortured all these people, and then he went back and then they were still shoplifting, so he destroyed the planet. And you're like, oh. Okay, was there? I mean, I suppose it kind of fits the era, like, you know, just when they originally created it, it's like 90s, like extreme. I can kind of imagine his design having lots of like leg pouches and stuff, tiny feet, big thighs.
But would he have the bat nipples?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Somebody else's maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that got dark.
Do you have a favorite Primarch?
It changes a lot depending on the Primarch book that I'm reading at that time and like how good it is. I think probably overall it's Lionel Johnson. Like, I like how grumpy he is. And,
You kind of look like him.
I have just completely modelled my look on him as well. So, I'm really happy he came back, and I'm really happy like he came back as like a sort of mellowed, grumpy version that like I didn't see that coming, and I really like it. I think it kind of links to some like small short snippets about him in the aftermath of the Siege of Terror, and how like broken he is by all of it, and like I really like that, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see him meeting Rabute and how that goes. But yeah, like, you know, I read something like the Praetorian of Dawn, and I'm like, Dawn is the coolest one, because that is an absolute great book. I very few people would probably agree, but
Hot take.
Yeah, he's, you know, got one of the only confirmed kills. Got to say that's good for him. And yeah, like I like Angron. I like how he was never on board with any of it. Like, he just kind of, they forced him into doing it as much as they possibly could. There's a short story with Arkham Land where I don't know if you've read it, where the Emperor is like looking at Angron's body and trying to work out if he can take out the butcher's nails. It's a really interesting short story. I'll see if I can find the link, and I won't spoil anything, but I think there's so many interesting things with Angron, and like what eventually happens to him, and then what like all the stuff in the siege as well. And I think that's very cool. I think they've done an amazing job on fleshing out these like random names they picked from a hat, like as some as jokes to fill out all of them, and then kind of made them as whole rounded characters and put them in. Yeah, sometimes it's a bit crowbar-y, but like, yeah, I think I enjoy him.
But I think the crowbar-y speaks also to that like soap opera-y, like space opera, like over the top. You know, that's like what, like the Heresy especially is that type of like over the top storytelling that like there's room for you to just kind of like shove a random story in there that explains some random facet of it because it's so big.
Yeah, it's so big. And have you guys read the Dawn of War books? Dawn of Fire?
No.
So it's like the current storyline. So it's kind of Rabute like going off on the Dominus Crusade and what happens there. And like halfway through, one of the historiators that Rabute sets up to kind of write about these things starts writing a book. And he, you know, the first line is, "I was there the day that Horus slew the Emperor."
Oh.
So the whole series is deniably from the perspective of this random guy in the 42nd millennium looking up all the notes that the Inquisition have kind of hidden away for years. And so all of it is deniable. And it's two sentences, and then they never I was really hoping they'd mention it again. It's been 4 more books. They haven't mentioned a single word of it about it. And I was like, that is so wonderfully like all of the world of Warhammer 40k that you could just have something that's completely like game changing, and you'll only know it if you've read this specific series of books and paid attention to this perfect moment in it. And it might not be true as well. Great.
in either, well, and that's I think a big part of what makes Warhammer unique versus like other sci-fi, we'll call them franchises, is that you do have this whole unreliable narrator. You have this like ability to just like move and warp canon around your needs, because it is from this perspective of like everything we get is from the perspective of the Imperium. And like,
Yep.
you know, what I like about what you just talked about is that like that also means that all the Horus Heresy novels are also through that same lens of like what the Imperium thinks the Horus Heresy is, therefore it may or may not be true.
Yeah, and then, you know, suddenly every criticism of all of the like all of the traitor Primarchs being kind of wet and useless suddenly makes sense because it's propaganda.
Yeah.
They could never show, you couldn't show them in a good light at all, and it excuses any bit of lazy writing because it's just some random schlub. It is interesting, and I definitely found that the biggest split kind of between people that are interested in the hobby are the people who would like it to stay how it was in their imaginations of what third edition was like, and like what the setting was. It's basically, you know, their rose-tinted vision of what 40k was like in their childhood versus anything changing. And I like new information and hyperfixate on things, and for me, publishing new stuff and giving you more toys, that's just like manna from heaven. Like, keep it up, just in, you know, as much as possible, because like, it will keep me interested. But I know that for some other people, it can be quite threatening almost, because it's like they've got a sort of, they feel like they've got a sense of how the universe works and what it should all like fit together like, and then actually, you know, you've got 30 years worth of material in between that where it's changed and all this stuff has happened and there's different things and they keep introducing new stuff, and I love that. There's just more and more things inside that.
And then those same people are in the comment section saying no female space marines.
But there were. If you go back far enough, there were female Space Marine models.
Yeah.
And I like, and it takes. I think it's an interesting one, because GW's done some good work towards representation, but the thing is, like, they get more advertising. However much anyone screams about Warhammer online, means more people get to see about Warhammer. Like, actually, like any stuff kind of helps them. And it would be an absolute storm if they introduced it, but storm of people who probably don't buy any models. So, you know, the biggest, I think Peachy did an interview recently where he was talking about like the game stores and who are the biggest customers of 40k, and he was like, it's mums, and it's like 30 to 45-year-old women spend more money on Warhammer than any other group because they're buying it for their kids. And, you know, there's that narrow kind of window of when, you know, you spend more money at the beginning of the hobby than any other time. You buy all the paints, you buy paintbrushes, you build up a collection, and those are the people that 40k is for. Like, that's the customer base. And, you know, I like, and then suddenly it makes sense why they got rid of like bondage slaves and you know, toned down
the demonette nipples.
This is a battle and stuff like, exactly. You know, and I think it's such a kind of missed opportunity, and there are so many different ways you could do it. Cole could do it. He could just turn up one day and say, oh yeah, I realized that we've got like 500 trillion female children that we could use to make super soldiers as well. Why don't we try this? When I say why don't we, I have actually made like 10 new legions from some, you know, maybe some traitor gene seed that I had left over. And then it becomes its own thing, and then it could be a huge argument and like a big battle, and you know, it'd be great. Or you have it, the Emperor the Emperor had a backup plan, or one of the lost Primarchs come back, or there's so many ways they could do it, and I think it just feels like it's such a I think it feels like it's such a hot point that they just need to lance the boil, because it does attract the worst parts of the hobby. And as soon as they've done it, the argument's over. Like, it doesn't matter what anyone says. As soon as they've made a model with the female head, it takes no time at all to sculpt.
Yeah.
And Lionel Johnson coming back, he's got one book. So there you go, one book, one model. That's all you need to do. And then listen, everyone will argue about it for a year, and then there'll be something new for people to argue
But that has
about.
people talking, and that's all they need.
There we go.
Well, I often thought, like, their weird pipeline of like ex presenters, there seem to be like, there's a lot of people talk about maybe the presenters, they're not trying to make them celebrities and stuff like that, so that when they leave they can't make money. And it's a weird one, because they leave and then they make content for free about Warhammer, so they're still promoting it just now for free, and they enrich themselves, but I don't know, it grows, it keeps on growing, the ecosphere. I'd be interested to see what happens if the Amazon series gets up, and I really hope
everyone's
it does,
waiting and watching.
Yeah. What do you guys reckon it will be?
Well, wasn't there didn't Netflix have something before, and it was like the Inquisition, or
I think there was a deal. There was some sort of deal that didn't go anywhere, and I think it was for Eisenhorn, and there were some people attached to it, and then it just died. and then vanished. I mean, I would be amazed if it wasn't Eisenhorn, because that's such a good introduction to the world and the universe, and you have a lot of baseline humans. You could be like, here are some baseline humans, they're in the future.
I mean, from a pure
here's our monster of the week
fun perspective, I would like to see Caiaphas Cain, because I think that's both a series that is very like human based, and you wouldn't necessarily have to have a bunch of over the top characters, but then is also quite fun. And I think Caiaphas Cain also emphasizes a lot more of the like silliness of Warhammer in a lot of ways, like the ridiculousness of it. But I highly doubt they would actually do it. The Indominus Crusade would probably be one of the more likely, like, to tell that story, because that's both. Not everyone has necessarily read those books, but it's such a changing thing that people would be attracted to learn more about it.
I can't get my head around trying to make something that's like predominantly Space Marines.
But that's that's what they're going to do.
Not just because they're. I was going to say not because they're. They're obviously they are the biggest seller, but just because it's quite difficult to make a drama. Like people are like, oh yeah, you should do the Heresy. I'm like, what, 1,000 dudes who all look exactly the same in like different color armor. Each chapter has like 100 speaking characters. Like, it would visually, despite all the other stuff that was going around, like, the human element would be so boring to watch. Like, you think about Horus's Legion, they all look exactly like him, apart from like a couple of them look very slightly different.
Yeah.
Or Alpha Legion.
Oh great, that's
where they just say, I'm Alpha.
Alpha Legion, yeah. This is gonna make some riveting television.
Bunch of gravelly voiced men just grumping at each other.
Which is that one? And I mean, I find it like the Siege books, like I'm enjoying them so much, but there was quite a big gap between. I think I can't remember what the last one was before the Siege of Terror series. But as soon as I started reading the Siege of Terror series, I have to stop all the time and look people up and be like, oh, okay, so he is that guy who did this thing, and then Dembski Brown just introduces 500 more characters, and I'm like, oh, great.
I think their biggest challenge is the visuals. Like, I think if they do Space Marines, like, the armor has to look right. I think that's what people are going to be looking at, instead of like the characters themselves.
I think really hard, because also, I mean, like, which Space Marines do they look like? Do they look like the cartoony, like, 8th edition like Bandai Space Marines, or that very kind of heroic like art, or much more the grim darkness? Like there's quite a few different proportions and different styles of it. It's going to be interesting. I mean, I kind of would like if they did like a sort of anthology series, but the risk there is that none of them have the budget, and all of them are just a bit lackluster, a bit like Warhammer Plus. We're like, oh, this is the grain of a brilliant idea, but it's way too short, and you haven't actually been able to spend enough time on it, and then it's over, and you're like, okay, fine, on to the next kind of completely forgettable thing. Like I really enjoyed some of it, and then a month later, I'm like, I can't think of a single thing that's on it.
Yeah, there's been actually I tried to I don't know Games Workshop. I keep hearing things they've been having like troubles in Canada. You can't sign up for Warhammer Plus, or like it keeps blocking people, and so like you can't even start a subscription right now.
You can't even actually watch it.
Yeah, so like there was a Lucius video that I was like interested in, and some of the Tau stuff has actually looked kind of interesting, and it's like, oh, I should look at it. No, so we're booted.
Yeah, and I was very down on the I was like, I'm not going to use the new app. I'm not going to use it. And then it came out
for free.
Like, I'll try it. I'll try it for free. Oh wow, okay. I can do like 500 lists in like a minute, and I can I'll try out a Tyranids army list, and then I wrote Tyranids army list, and then I spent like 500 quid buying the Tyranids to go with it, and I was really enjoying that. And then they were like, oh, you've got it for so much time, and then you won't be able to have it, and then you have to buy a codex to get the rules, and then the Battlescribe team got off their ass, and even despite having said they're never going to update it ever again, of course they updated it.
The demand was there.
The demand was there for them to do a free thing that they don't earn any money from and hate doing apparently, but always somehow update.
But you just
weeks.
proved a prime example that it was for free. It got you excited, and you went out and bought the models.
Yep. Because like if you're playing to game and you're buying an army, how are you meant to do it? Like if you like, that's what I can't get my head around. The only thing I can think is that all of their different departments are individually bonused on their own specific sales. That's all I can think. That's the only reason I think they could do it. So the book department, they've got their sales and they have to get that, otherwise they don't get any money. And the Warhammer Plus department has to get it, because they would make so much more money as a company if they were like, here's how to make an army. Oh, and you finish the army and then you press buy, and then it puts it all into your like basket. It's crazy that it doesn't do that.
That is such a great idea. And like for
the lunacy,
it's for money, but at the same time, AOS app is free. Same company.
Yeah.
Just different side of
probably a different department. Probably there's the AOS gaming department who, because it's a smaller game, it's just the whole of AOS, so they're bonused on all of the sales of AOS as a thing, and they're like, oh, I've got this brilliant idea. What if we just had it as this one thing?
I'm just like the idea of like having an add to cart that then is tied to your like Warhammer account already is such an obvious thing that you're right would make completely justify the app being free.
Right, and also like I think if you just speculatively write a list and you're like, oh, this is kind of cool, and you got new Emperor's Children and there's like Noise Marines and blah blah blah, and then like a week later it pops up and goes, you remember that list you wrote? Why not buy it right now?
Reminder, a little notification.
Well, they do the email thing. Like if you're,
this is my idea, and please cut me in for a small proportion of the massive amount of money you would make.
Yeah, you heard it here.
You just gotta go find James. You're in the UK. You gotta find James Workshop and get your piece.
Yeah, I mean, I do occasionally look at their jobs, because I think it'd be an interesting place to work for. But like, they don't do very much stuff remote, and I'm in a very Greek North London part of North London, and my partner is Greek Cypriot, and so all of her family live around us, and we're not going anywhere. We're not moving to Nottingham.
Fair. Kaylee just wrote a note here wanting to ask you about the War Barbie competition.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, of course. So, War Barbie is an amazing competition. We're all flagging a little bit. It's an amazing competition, and somebody has just made, I don't know if you've seen this, a Sylvanian family doll with like a minigun, and it is doing numbers on TikTok. It is absolute. Do you know Sylvanian family?
No.
it's like cute little bunny rabbits.
Oh,
and, like,
I think did you
foxes
put in your
maybe,
stories?
that like live in houses, and like it's huge in the UK and Europe. It's like all these lovely little dollhouse things. Anyway, this guy's made this just added a minigun and some other bit like Slanesh bits actually, I think, and it looks so much fun and it's wonderful. So War Barbie, the idea behind it is you get a Barbie or any other type of doll and you cut it to pieces and you make some sort of kit bash or diorama out of it. And we're nearly 2/3 of the way in. We've got till the 31st of September to build.
You mean October?
We've got some cool 31st of October. Yeah, we've got 2 days left. Loads of time.
Podcast has
build whatever you want. You go back in time and then build yourself something.
For Halloween.
So some amazing like hobby people have entered it already. Like I think some of my particular favorites, like High Tech Choga, did this like very elegant sculpted model, which is like absolutely beautiful. Banhouse Miniatures has done this like horrific medieval sort of Tweety bird with a big Barbie head, and this guy called Dark Isles has done this like wall of doll faces. I didn't appreciate that setting up this challenge would mean that my feed was entirely full of vivisected dolls for like 2 months. Because after the 8th one, you're like, starting to feel a little bit off.
It's feeling queasy.
It's a little bit queasy because everyone's in the building stage as well, so they're all just like, there's a hand and there's another hand and there's all like neatly laid out with the knife next to it, and very sort of serial killer-y.
So is Instagram like pushing like other content creators with dissecting dollies too?
There's been a few. There's been a few people. It's been really interesting. I would say that my following gender balance has always been bad. So it's usually about 98% men and 2% women. Self-identified, obviously. So lots of like people don't mention it. It's gone up to 4.5% since I did the Barbie competition.
Amazing.
And what I've noticed is that there's people from other spheres are kind of getting involved with it. So some dolls house people, which already there was a UK competition where TV show where people had to build dolls houses, and a guy who makes Warhammer won it, and that kind of introduced a whole nother load of people into Warhammer, and suddenly you got like miniature like painting artists started following you and stuff, so it really kind of brought it out. But I think this has been the single one thing where it's joined in so many different communities, some Transformers people as well. It's been fantastic. So I'm really looking forward to the end result, and it's really exciting. And Nurgle Snuggle is helping me judge.
I get to look at all those dolls. So how can someone enter? So
if you either go onto my Instagram and look at the War Barbie logo, which is very obviously says War Barbie, and I'll repost it again tonight. And we basically want you to email to warbarbie2023@gmail.com 3 images of your final piece with your social media handle or where best to contact you by the 31st. And there's going to be 3 prizes. The top one is the Cities of Sigmar new box, a paintbrush, there's some SDLs that a guy's donated, which I need to sort out, and Veronica is making a horrific. If you don't know Veronica, her tagline is Florencentia Grotesque. She makes the most disturbing models of anyone I know. She's making a trophy for it, and I can't wait to see it because it's going to be super gross. Second place is a Warcry kit, a paintbrush. Third place is a different Warcry kit and a paintbrush. I tried to. Cryptic Cabin very kindly donated these. I went for kits that I think are going to be really good for bits for kit bashing. So even if you don't collect those particular factions, it's just going to give you a wealth of parts to make other things.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
that sounds both horrifying and incredible. So
I can recommend following the hashtag. It is really good fun.
Well, Laurence, I want to thank you for coming on. And before we wrap up, is there anything else you wanted to bring up or mention? Or
Where can we find you?
You can find me on Instagram as Baharroth, the Cry of Old Paint. You can find me on YouTube as Old Paint, because I got rid of the Baharroth for it because no one can say it. I'm on TikTok as Baharroth as well. And I think that's about it. Just before we go, the reason I'm called Baharroth, the Cry of Old Paint, is when I got my old models out, the first model that I stripped was Baharroth, who's called the Cry of the Wind. And because I had all this old paint, I was like, the Cry of Old Paint, and it took me 2 seconds to think of, and now I'm stuck with it.
Wonderful.
You know what? Those are the best. Those are the best usernames. Are the ones that come easily and then haunt you forever.
I don't think anyone sets up Instagram expecting like to build any sort of community or size. You're just like, I just want to look at some cool shit.
Yeah.
I'll just use a completely ridiculous
I did
name.
Nurgle Snurgle because I was just like, what rhymes with Nurgle? And I said Snurgle. I was like, that made me laugh. I'll do that.
That's perfect.
Well, I think we're at the end of this.
Yeah.
I don't want to take up any more of your time. It's like midnight over in the UK at this point. So
I have
exactly midnight, so...
sneaky feeling that we could probably be doing this for quite some time.
Yeah.
And perhaps this won't be
I've had
the
an
last
absolute
time
blast.
that you'll be on. So
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for inviting me. It's the first time I've done a podcast. I've had absolutely like mega time,
awesome.
And yeah, would be very happy to do it again.
It was great. It was wonderful.
Absolutely fantastic having you. Maybe you know what? Maybe when the War Barbie competitions finish, we'll have you back on to talk about how that. There we go. That's an idea. And in the meantime, I want to thank all of our listeners and thank you for joining us. So don't forget to subscribe to Chaos Divided, both here and on Instagram and YouTube at Chaos Divided 40K, and you can find your hosts on social media at Nurgle_Snurgle and at Blushing Noise Marine. And until next time, bye bye.
Ciao for now.